She mailed it February 1st, 1985, last possible day. What chance? What chance did she have? 11,500 teachers applied. What chance? But she made the cutoff. 114 teachers made the cutoff, and they were to fly tomorrow to Washington, D.C. So that night, Krista wanted a good sleep. She got Scott settled and Caroline settled. She was going to go to bed, but there was a knock on her door. She opened it, and there was a nearly hysterical high school student, a young woman. Please, can I come in, Miss McCullough? Please, I think I'm going to kill myself. She brought the young woman in. Can I call your parents? You can call them if you promise. I don't have to spend the night with them. She called the parents. They came and they talked hour after hour. Finally, the parents left. The student's still there. 3 in the morning, she gets her to sleep. Krista wakes up exhausted. Cup of coffee, flies to Washington, and Krista McAuliffe is chosen to be the teacher in space. Boom, 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 big parade in Concord, New Hampshire. BBC is coming, NBC, ABC. Krista's a star. 6 months before the Challenger is to lift off with a crew of 7, including Krista. In Utah, Roger Beaujolais, an engineer for the Morton Thiokol Company, writes a memo to senior management. If we don't solve this problem immediately, there'll be a catastrophe, loss of life. He's talking about the O-rings, rubber seals that seal the joints in the solid rocket booster. Been a problem for years. The hot gas blows by, or has blown by, the primary ring. If it blows by the secondary ring, there can be an explosion. Krista knows nothing of this, of course. Krista is worried about meeting the crew. She's getting the publicity. So she meets Dick Scobie, the commander of the Challenger mission. 6'1", handsome, former Vietnam fighter pilot. And he says, Krista, these are not firecrackers that lift us off. This is the real thing. She wins him over with her enthusiasm and her effort, and it's clear she's not in this to be a star. She's in this to teach. So he takes her aside one day. Krista, this will always be remembered as the teacher in the space mission, and we're proud of it. The Challenger is to lift off January 28th. There have been several delays. January 27th, NASA calls Morton Thiokol out in Utah. Hey, listen, Thiokol, going to be cold in Florida. It might be down to low 20s. We safe to launch. The manager says, no, I already talked to my engineers. It's got to be 53 degrees or higher. You know, we're worried about the resiliency of the O-ring. Oh, well, listen. We'll have a telephone conference tonight. That night, 34 managers and engineers, NASA, Morton Thiokol, are on the phone. It begins with a long history of the O-rings. And a NASA man gets frustrated. He does not think Morton Thiokol has proved his case. And he says, my God, Thiokol, what do you want us to do? Wait till April to launch? The manager says, listen, NASA, we'll be back on the horn in a minute. We're going to talk among ourselves. 4 managers say, well, listen, we got to make a managerial decision, meaning the engineers are excluded. So Arnie Thompson, Morton Thiokol engineer, runs forward and does a sketch. He's afraid the O-ring may not expand in the cold. He's not listened to. Roger Beaujolais comes. He's got 2 photographs showing the hot gas having blown by the primary ring. He's not listened to. The manager calls back, hey, NASA, listen, we changed our mind. It's safe to launch. The next morning, the crew is woken at 6:20. There's a weather briefing at breakfast. 25 degrees, single digits, a wind chill. Dick Scobie, the commander, leads them out into the cold. Down the ramp, the press is cordoned off. A NASA quality assurance man says, Krista, here, take an apple. Save it, I'll eat it when I get back. The crew is strapped in at 8:30. They're on their backs. There's a delay. Out in the cold, Ed Corrigan. He's waiting with his wife, Grace. They're cold, and they're waiting and waiting. 11:38, the Challenger lifts up, and that white fire is perfect. It's beautiful, magnificent for the first minute. And shortly after that, Ed Corrigan, he sees a yellow plume, and then he sees a fireball. And then he sees debris of the Challenger flying out of the fireball. And then smoke and silence. She's gone. She's gone. And Jack got up and said, why the hell would you talk about death? We got 1 hour at MIT. I am going to talk about Krista McAuliffe, Jack, because millions of people will never forget that moment. There was a writer. He was on the San Diego freeway at that time. He said at the moment of the explosion, all of the cars slowed down at the very same second. Krista McAuliffe is the ordinary person. She's you. She's me. Maybe the best of us, but she's the ordinary person, Jack. And if I do this, and if we do this, if we talk about Krista, then we talk about all of the Challenger crew. We talk about all the Columbia crew. We talk about Gus Grissom, Ed White, Roger Chaffee. We remember them all. And I do it because it's exploration, Jack. Exploration is dangerous. We forget that. Magellan set out with 5 ships. He died. Did you know Magellan died along the way? 1 of his ships made it back. 1 out of 5. just under 3 years with 22 of the original 280 people. And finally, Jack, it's science. I have to have the courage to tell the truth. Oh, Kate, you're going to have the courage to tell the truth. Kate's so courageous. We're in love 2.5 years. You walk into my apartment, here's your ring, Jack. It won't work. You didn't have the guts to stand there. You're right. I'm scared, Jack. I'm scared. My mother was 18 years old, a freshman at the University of Oklahoma, and she was a brilliant pianist. Mom thought she might be great. Dad said to Mom, Dad was a senior. He said, take a couple of years off. We'll get the hardware store going. She did. Then I was born. My brother was born. Mom never got back. You know what a horrible stroke Daddy has had. His mind doesn't work. You know that. He can't talk anymore. Mom's life is this. She wheels Dad into the hardware store. That's her life every day. She has one free day, Sunday. You know what she does at home? She washes the walls, Jack. I think she washes the walls to make the walls disappear. Well, Kate, we're on Sunday night, 7 o'clock. Be there at 6 for a sound check. The next night was Friday night. Jack was in his apartment. There was a knock. The door was flung open, and in came Cynthia Moss, Kate's apartment mate. She came right forward. They were eye to eye. She said, I don't know what went on between the two of you last night, but Kate is very upset, and she's got the GREs tomorrow. I'm here to find out, what are you going to do Sunday night at MIT, Jack? Well, Cynthia, for your information, I might read a complete list of the accomplishments of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and explain a few of them in a way even you could understand them. You condescending ass. What happened to you? You used to be fun, Jack. You'd come up the stairs singing. We called you the Pavarotti Lobsterman. I know what you're going to do at MIT. You're going to come out on the stage. You're going to have your shirt and tie and your tweed jacket and your fake half glasses. You're going to hide behind the podium, aren't you? Then you're going to stutter till everyone's sorry for you. Then you're going to bore us, Jack. Well, I'm bringing celery. You bore us, I'm going to eat the celery. And if you dare to condescend, I'll throw the celery at you. Don't ruin this for Kate. Sunday night at MIT, 7:15, Kate was backstage. She peeked out. It was a good house. Cynthia was in the front row wearing her green wig. Something was in a paper bag on her lap. Kate was nervous, but she thought she did well in the GRE. She heard something, and she turned. It was Edith Whiteside. I read about this in the Boston Globe. You gave me a leaf. I give you a rose. Take us to the stars. And that's exactly what Kate did. She told everyone about being 5 years old and her dad becoming a poet, just for a moment. The blackness of the stars. Not just above us, all around us, Kate. The audience was intrigued to hear about a 5-year-old Cherokee boy who had a vision and had the courage to stay with it. She told them the story, but then she told them that J.C. Heigl was an engineer 40 years at NASA. And he established a society to support and encourage Native Americans to become scientists, engineers. The audience was surprised to find out how hard that first moon landing was and what coolness was required. And maybe even more important, they heard people all around the earth said, we did it, we did it! This was NASA's accomplishment, but it was also humanity's. And finally, they were honored. She told the truth about the Challenger and Krista. So now it was up to Jack. Jack came out on the stage, shirt, tie, tweed jacket. He stood behind the podium, had his half glasses. Ladies and gentlemen, I thought I might read a complete list of the accomplishments of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory responsible for robots. Jack took off the half glasses, took off the tweed jacket, stepped out in front. He seemed to expand. That sounds wicked boring, doesn't it? My first memory of the stars is when I was 5, 6 years old. My granddad's lobster boat, off Portland, Maine, 4 in the morning. My granddad, he said, some people go to offices. My office mates are the stars. My granddad taught me celestial navigation. I found out I was good with numbers, and my dad taught me piloting. Physics is the push and pull of things. It's like lobstering. You push the pot out and you pull it in. You've got to pay attention in both. I'm going to tell you one story about the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I selected this because it's a marriage of science and imagination, and it seems to me that's what NASA does best. So the story I'm going to tell you begins in 1965 when space exploration is new. It begins with a fellow named Gary Flandro. Gary Flandro, Caltech grad student, was working for JPL. So Flandro is in his office, JPL, paying attention, and he says, my gosh, yes. Flandro realizes the outer planets, the gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, are going to be lined up on one side of the sun in a way they have not been lined up for 176 years. They have not been lined up that way since Jefferson's time, and they won't be lined up for another 176 years. So Flandre thinks, this is a time for a grand tour. Yes, a grand tour of the outer planets. Of course, he knows all about gravity assist, meaning you take a spacecraft, come up behind a planet, and the gravity of that planet flings it forward at a tremendous speed. A grand tour of the outer planets. Scientists are excited. Now remember, this is 1965. Getting to Mars is hard, a lot of failures. Mars, when it's closest to Earth, 35 million miles away. When you're talking about Neptune, you're talking about 2.5 billion miles away. Is that possible? Nobody knows. And then Congress says, cut it back. It's too expensive. Cut it back. Maybe you can go to Jupiter and Saturn. That's it. So the engineers and scientists get busy designing and building 2 spacecraft that are going to be called the Voyagers. They only weigh about 1,800 pounds. Each looks like it's got a big television disc. But they work with great care because what if? They build them so carefully they get to Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus. Is it possible? Uranus. They're going to lift off in 1977. Here's where imagination comes in. Carl Sagan, the astronomer, he says, why don't we send a message with the Voyagers? What kind of message? He talks to Lewis Thomas, the biologist, and Thomas says, well, why don't you send all of Bach? And he says, no, that would be boasting. Sound. That's interesting. We're going to send pictures, but how could we send sound? On a copper record, gold-plated. It will last at least 1 million years. Sound. What kind of sound? We'll send hello. We'll just send hello in 55 languages. Just hello, hello. And sounds of the earth. Yes, yes, sounds of whales, and the sound of thunder, and the sound of frogs, and the sound of Morse code, and a baby crying, and a kiss, and music. We'll send Mozart and Bach and Beethoven. More imagination. They call across the country to the World Music Center. There's a Mr. Brown there. He says, you mean these things have got to go to the stars? Then you got to send Kisa by Kirkar, singing Jahan Hat Ho. Who's that? Kisa by Kirkar, born in Calcutta, beloved in India. You got to get a record of her singing Jahan Hat Ho. The door is opening, not just Western music. They talk to Alan Lomax, who has spent a lifetime collecting ethnic music. Lomax says, listen to this. This is a Bulgarian shepherdess song. This is the sound of people who had enough to eat for the first time. The door is flung open. Music of the world. Australian horn and totem music. Pygmy Girl's initiation song, Melanesian panpipe, Chinese gin music, Japanese flute music, but all of this takes time. And now the music list must be closed in 3 days. They crawl across the country. Mr. Brown, we have tried everywhere to get a record of this Kisa by Kirka. We've tried record stores. We've tried libraries. Find it! Now there's 2 days left. They call him back. Mr. Brown, find it! Imagination. They call Indian restaurants all over the place. And one of them says, yes, yes, yes. New York City, Lexington Avenue in the 20s. There's an appliance store run by an Indian family. Go into the appliance store, you will see a card table with a Madras cover. Underneath the card table is a carton. In the carton is a recorder singing that song. They get it. And they get President Carter to send a message. He says, this is a present from our small planet. And I like that. Seems to me, maybe we're growing up instead of taking everything from the universe, we're giving something back. So the Voyagers take off. One of them lifts off August 1977, the other September 1977, with 55 hellos. Bonjour, ciao, ni hao, shalom, ahlan wa salam. Hello, hello, we want to say hello. We want to say hello to you. 1979, a flyby Jupiter. And the scientists are excited. They discover that one of Jupiter's moons, Io, turns out to be the most volcanic body in our solar system. And another of Jupiter's moons, Europa, covered with ice. But underneath that ice may be a salt sea, bigger than the Atlantic and Pacific put together. There may be life in Europa. And the Voyager sails on. Hello, hello, we want to say hello. Saturn. And then, January 24th, 1986, a flyby Uranus. 4 exciting days flying by Uranus. And on the 4th day, January 28th, 1986, on the East Coast, the Challenger explodes. And the Voyager sails on. Hello, hello. The Berlin Wall falls, the Voyager sails on. Nelson Mandela released from prison after 27 years, and the Voyager sails on. 2 Russians, 1 American live in space 136 days. Living in space has begun. Cooperation in space has begun. Hello, hello, the Hubble telescope is launched. Blurred vision, it's the joke of late-night television. The blurred vision is corrected. And now, through the Hubble telescope, we see objects 12 billion light years away. We see the dance of the universe as it's never been seen. And the Voyagers sail on. February 14th, 1990, Voyager 2 is beyond Pluto. Sends back a photograph of our solar system. In that photograph, the Earth is no bigger than the eye of a goldfish. It's a speck, and on that speck is everything we love. And the Voyager sails on. The Clinton years. Princess Diana dies. The year 2000. My dad, a lobsterman in Portland, Maine. He crosses the street. He collapses. He's dead of a heart attack. I had my ups and downs with my dad, but I loved him and I'm shaken. 9/11, the whole country is shaken, and the Voyagers sail on. Hello, hello, 2003. I come to MIT wondering, am I good enough to get a PhD? I'm scared to death. I meet a young woman, engineering student. We fall in love, and the Voyager sails on. 2004, 2 rovers, Spirit and Opportunity, set down on Mars. They're expected to go 3 months and stop because the solar panels are going to be covered with dust. Surprise! The wind on Mars blows the dust off, and rovers are going as I speak. 2004, the spacecraft Cassini begins to orbit Saturn, and now we see the rings in Saturn as clearly as you see the grooves in a record. I get engaged on my stuffed shirt. She calls it off and breaks my heart. My left fist is the sun. My right fist is the Earth, 93 million miles away. The Voyagers aren't even in the room. They're downtown. The Voyagers are 10 billion miles from the sun. I'm sure you all know about the solar wind. It's really particles coming from the sun, streaming out at 1 million miles an hour and more, forming a great big bubble our whole solar system is in. Some people call it heliosphere. Bubble's a better term. In 6 or 7 years, Voyagers are going to leave the bubble. They're going to go to interstellar space. They're going to reach the Oort cloud in the year 26,000. They're going to make the closest approach to the star Sirius in the year 296,036. They're going to pass. They're going to pass the 12 nearest stars in the year 1 million. And who knows? Some civilization may find one of them, play the golden record. They'll hear Kisa by Kierkegaard. They'll hear Pygmy Girl's Initiation Song, Melanesian panpipes. They'll hear Louis Armstrong and Navajo Night Chant, and they'll hear Mozart and Bach, Beethoven, and they'll hear blind Willie Johnson singing Dark Was the Night, and maybe they'll say, these beings want to dance. And I think that'd be just about right. Seems to me what we've been doing the last 50 years, we've been dancing our way into the universe. Jack finished. Silence. Edith Whiteside stood up, began to applaud. Kate never heard such applause. Cynthia ran up onto the stage and hugged Jack. 3 weeks later, Jack took Kate down to Gloucester, borrowed his friend's lobster boat, and Jack and Kate went out, way out to sea. The stars were brilliant. The sea was calm. Well, Kate, the blackness and the stars are not just above us, they're all around us. They're inside us, Jack. All of the molecules in our bodies were forged billions of years ago in generations of stars. Jack, let's get married. You serious? Of course I'm serious. I love you. I'm scared, but I love you. I've even thought about the wedding food. I want pizza and eclairs. And Jack, I want to be married on Mars. Well, Kate, I'll take you on my lobster boat. What do you think? That'd be great, Jack. Why not? Why not? Why not?